Centro Property Group was one of Australia's biggest disasters out of the global financial crisis. They began their journey as Jennings Property Limited in 1985 as an Australian property investor that developed and managed Australian shopping centres. In 1995, Jennings Property changed its name to Centro Property Group. In the 2000s, it commenced a number of mergers and acquisitions, followed by international investments in the United States in 2003. The international investments fueled a period of increased investment that led to higher debt and returns. Centro increased its property worth to 26 billion Australian dollars in 2007, with most of this being gained debt. Centro's activities were uncovered through a variety of financial risks, including foreign currency, interest rate, price, credit and liquidity risk. The main problem found was the use of debt to finance the asset investments. This debt was short-term, but they were under the assumption that refinancing into longer-term debt was not only an option, but guaranteed. In 2007, the false reporting of current liabilities as non-current liabilities came to an end because they failed to renegotiate a debt of $1.3 billion. During this year, in the global financial crisis, the real estate and credit markets were responsible for the events that caused the company to break down. Later in 2008, Centro Property Group became bankrupt. Although to reduce the company's gearing ratios, it continued to sell the whole United States investment. The company's failure was due to their stop of cash flow, which affected their ability to pay their debts despite the value of their assets. Their disorganised internal accounting procedures made it difficult to obtain the finances. Investors, meanwhile, were accusing Centro of misleading them by not revealing the true size of the company's short and long-term debt obligations. This formed the basis of civil suits that the shareholders brought against Centro Property Group for failing to make the necessary disclosures in their financial reports, and also against PwC, the former auditors of Centro Properties, for their part in failing to ensure the disclosures were made in the financial reports provided to the shareholders.
The ASX Corporate Governance Principles and Recommendations are a collection of 8 core principles and 35 further recommendations. The core principles set a framework for good corporate governance by outlining methods of corporate structure, risk management, acting ethically, and presenting and disclosing of financial reports. The ASX Corporate Governance Guidelines have been revised 4 times, with the latest occurring in 2019. The guidelines should be followed by all ASX listed companies with an "if not, why not" approach for companies that choose not to follow the selected principles. Those that choose not to follow the guidelines must disclose why. The companies that fall in the top 300 listed companies must adhere to specific guidelines with no options to be omitted.
Recognising and managing risk focuses on different approaches to improve and change the environment to create value. In this governance model, it is key to divide all risks and allocate it appropriately across the company. Risk management should not be viewed as a deterrent of risk-taking behaviour, and if viewed this way, it can lead to corporate failure because innovation is a risk associated with business operations. A risk management framework focuses on delivering knowledge to help leaders gain responses to perform efficiently. Because the framework consists of procedures for connection, assessment and evaluation to risk, it assists the business with a plan to list the priorities within the business. Agency theory is used to explain the source of resolutions in workplace issues. This theory also urges the company to deliver results to provide a view of its capabilities to recognise and manage risk. Risk management programs provide official evidence to highlight strategies to generate value in the business environment. Self-interested managers show the conflict of interest obtaining the value of outlays made. This associates owners and managers' needs to develop interest in the future to generate greater success with progressive stability. The lack of knowledge from Centro Group's Risk Committee follows Recommendation 7.1 as the directors were signing off on documents without reading and understanding them. This allowed the borrowing of funds from various finances to keep the business operations funded and permitted the documents to be inaccurate. The amount of $1.5 billion was incorrectly entered as non-current liabilities when it was supposed to be current liabilities. Recommendation 7.2 follows Centro's inability to obtain a risk management procedure. Because the directors failed to put this in place, The company was accepting the accumulation of debt, which showed a lack of monitoring through the organisation. By ignoring the debt accumulated by Centro and establishing a risk management framework, it could have raised potential risks and failures within the company.
The corporate reports are utilised by many stakeholders, and as such, the integrity of the information contained within them should be paramount. Within the corporate governance principles, Recommendation 4 outlines means for corporate entities to safeguard their reports from misinformation. All listed companies should maintain due process in verifying the integrity of the corporate reports in accordance with the ASX corporate governance guidelines. While the Centro Group's audit committee was properly formed, it was not effective in its dissemination of information to the executive directors on its findings, with flow-on effects to the stakeholders. The committee did not raise the concerns of debt ratios or the allocation of maturity of the debt to the executive board. Each year, the committee would only allocate 2 meetings to discuss the financial reports, one interim and one end of financial year meeting. This can be seen as insufficient by a broad accounting community. Had the committee met more frequently, internal and external auditors could have better raised the issues found within the financial reports. Recommendation 4.2 sees the effects of agency theory take dominance, as the executives were signing off on intentionally misstated financial reports for the gain of their performance rather than the duty of care they owe to the stakeholders. This became evident in the December 17 press release. The misstatement of the short-term debt as long-term liability began the downward spiral of the company. The share price tanked to $1.35 as a result. Had Centro complied with Recommendation 4.3 by disclosing the process in which Centro was delegating its debt and equity, the CEO and CFO could be held accountable for the decisions to rely on refinancing of the debt sooner than the December 17th date.
The fifth corporate governance principle addresses the way in which listed companies disclose information regarding the price or value of its shares. All listed companies are required to make disclosures both timely and balanced, ensuring all shareholders have equal access. Both current and potential shareholders are impacted on the decisions made by management. Therefore, this principle was formed to provide recommendations on the quality and relevance of financial information. Recommendation 5.1 suggests an entity to create a written disclosure policy directed at ensuring companies comply with obligations so all current shareholders have equal access. Applying this to the present case, if Centro had formulated such a policy, directors would have outlined obligations and responsibilities. This recommendation relates to agency theory, where companies should provide relevant stakeholders a level of accountability through disclosing matters in a timely and balanced manner. Furthermore, the collapse of Centro can be related to the failure of not disclosing $1.5 billion worth of guarantees. Had the Centro directors complied with the recommendations and through reviewing the financial statements, would allow for them to confirm there was no material misstatement. This failure could have been prevented their downfall whilst increasing the quality of disclosures. After the collapse of Centro, a class action took place on behalf of shareholders, alleging the company took place in misleading and deceptive conduct by not disclosing the full extent of their known debts. In particular, directors were accused of breaching their obligations of continuous disclosures. Through this, Centro admitted they were unable to refinance billions of dollars of debt. This class action would be related to stakeholder theory, as it explains the relationship between the company and its shareholders. While Centro are not required to follow the ASX recommendations, this urges the company to maintain ethical and moral standards.
Corporate governance is an international issue, particularly with the increases in globalisation and the number of firms with international operations. The Common Sense Principles 2.0 were updated in October 2018 by a group of prominent US CEOs. They aim to provide a framework for US public companies to implement good corporate governance practices to support longevity and continued company growth within an economy. When comparing these to the ASX corporate governance principles, there are some similarities in that there are 8 principles governing the areas of the board of directors, management compensation practices, reporting requirements, and the rights of shareholders. But there are also some significant differences. The Common Sense Principles place significant importance on the board of directors, with 4 of the 8 principles referring directly to the board. Significantly less importance is placed on the areas of risk management, reporting and disclosure, with no common sense principles referring to risk management and only 1 principle referencing disclosures. Principle 4, public reporting, suggests that companies should be transparent in the reporting of their quarterly financial results in accordance with the US generally accepted accounting principles, and recommends that companies frame their required quarterly reports in the broader context of its articulated strategy and reflect the progress towards long-term goals. It can be seen that by following this principle, Centro did not misclassify any debt items on their financial reports. They simply classified them in line with their long-term goals of the company. Management believed that refinancing the debt was not only an option, but likely to occur, and as such, believed that there was no need to report on or disclose this information. The issue here is that even though Centro Property Group had expanded into the US, it was still an Australian company listed on the Australian Securities Exchange, and as such, should have produced financial reports that complied with the ASX corporate governance guidelines. By aligning their reports more closely with the US common sense principles, they allowed misleading information to enter the market, which when rectified after the fact, had a detrimental impact on share prices and ultimately led to the group's corporate collapse. Centro Property Group was an Australian listed company who, after expanding to the US, no longer released financial reports which fully complied with ASX corporate governance principles. They misclassified their short and long-term debt obligations as they believed that refinancing would occur. In carrying out their business operations, they failed to effectively manage risk and failed to make the necessary disclosures that shareholders require. This led shareholders to bring civil class action suits against Centro Property Group and their former auditors, PwC.